The Red Pine gas station sat on the edge of town, right where the highway disappeared into forest. During the day, it was busy enough. Truckers passing through, locals grabbing coffee, people filling their tanks before work. But at night, the station was almost always empty. Red Pine was a small town. Barely 800 people lived there, and most of them were asleep by midnight, which made the night shift easy. Or at least, that's what the owner told Jake. Jake was 19. It was his first overnight job. Fresh out of high school, he'd taken the position because it paid a little more than the grocery store down the road. The hours were simple: 11 at night until 7 in the morning. Carl, the owner of the station, stood in the small security room beside the store, showing Jake how everything worked. The room was barely larger than a closet. A desk held the register, and a security monitor glowed softly on the wall above it. 4 camera feeds filled the screen. One showed the gas pumps. One showed the parking lot and the highway. One showed the narrow alley behind the building. And the last camera watched the inside of the store. Carl tapped the screen with one finger. "Mostly you just sit here," he said. "Watch the cameras. If someone pulls up after midnight, they pay through the window." He pointed toward the small sliding glass window that faced the pumps outside. Jake nodded. The job seemed easy. "Nothing ever happens out here," Carl said. Then he reached into his pocket and slid something onto the desk. A laminated card. Jake picked it up. At the top it read, "Night shift rules." He smirked. "You get a lot of weird customers or something?" Carl didn't smile. "Just follow them," he said. Jake looked down at the list. 8 rules were printed on the card. Some looked normal. Others, not so much. Carl grabbed his jacket from the hook near the door. Jake watched him. "Wait," he said. "Aren't you going to stay a little while, just to make sure I'm doing everything right?" Carl stopped. For a moment, he didn't say anything. Then he walked back to the counter. He tapped one of the rules on the laminated card. Rule 3. Jake read it again. Rule 3. Only one person can be in the security room at all times. Jake looked up. Carl was already walking toward the door. "Have a good night, kid," he said. Then he stepped outside. The door closed behind him, and a moment later, Jake watched the owner's truck disappear down the dark highway on camera 2, leaving him alone in the gas station. For a moment, he just stood there in the small security room, listening. The building made quiet noises once the truck was gone. The refrigerators hummed in the store. The fluorescent lights above the pumps buzzed faintly outside. Somewhere in the back, a vent rattled softly as the air system kicked on. Jake exhaled. It wasn't scary, just quiet. The security room was barely larger than a closet. A small desk held the register and the security monitor mounted on the wall above it. To Jake's right was the sliding payment window that faced the pumps outside. Through the glass wall beside him, he could see the entire convenience store. 3 narrow aisles, a wall of refrigerators, the front doors facing the pumps. It was a tiny place. Jake picked up the laminated card Carl had left on the desk. 8 rules were printed on it. He read the first one. Rule 1. Lock the front door at exactly 1 a.m. Anyone needing gas after that must pay through the window. Jake nodded to himself. That one made sense. He glanced through the glass into the store. The front doors were still unlocked for now. A little bell hung above them that would ring whenever someone walked in. He continued reading. Rule 2. Keep all 4 security cameras visible on the monitor at all times. Do not switch to single camera mode. Jake looked up at the screen above the desk. 4 camera feeds glowed softly. Camera 1 showed the gas pumps outside. Camera 2 showed the parking lot and the highway stretching into darkness. Camera 3 showed the narrow alley behind the building. Camera 4 showed the inside of the store. It was almost the same view he already had through the glass wall. Still, Jake understood why the cameras were there. He moved on. Rule 3. Only one person can be in the security room at all times. Jake frowned slightly. Carl had tapped that rule before leaving. Jake looked around the small room again. 2 people would barely fit in here anyway. Okay, he murmured. He continued. Rule 4. If you see someone inside the store, check camera 4 before leaving the security room. Jake instinctively looked through the glass wall. The store was empty. The fluorescent lights washed everything in that pale gas station glow. He glanced back up at the monitor. Camera 4 showed the exact same thing. Empty aisles. Rule 5. If someone inside the store does not appear on camera 4, do not leave the security room. They will leave eventually. Jake paused a little longer on that one. That rule didn't make much sense. How could someone be in the store but not appear on the camera? He looked up at the monitor again. Jake raised an eyebrow. That's weirdly dramatic, he muttered. Still, he kept reading. Rule 7. Before leaving, check camera 2. If the camera shows someone standing near your car, do not leave the security room. Wait until they are gone. Jake glanced up at camera 2. The parking lot was empty except for Carl's truck shrinking into the distance. The rule made him uneasy for a second. Then he shook it off and read the last one. Rule 8. If someone knocks on the security room window after 1 a.m., do not open it, no matter who it is. Jake stared at that line for a moment. Then he set the laminated card back down on the desk. All right, he said quietly. Weird rules, easy job. The first hour passed slowly. A pickup truck stopped for gas just before midnight. The driver paid through the window, nodded once, and drove off toward the highway. After that, the road went quiet again. By 12:40 a.m., Jake was leaning back in the chair, scrolling through his phone. Every few minutes, he glanced up at the monitor. Pumps, parking lot, alley, store. Nothing unusual. Then something made him look up again. Jake slowly lowered his phone. Through the glass wall beside the security room, he could see someone standing inside the store. A woman. She was near the refrigerators at the back wall, perfectly still, just looking toward the security room. Jake frowned. He hadn't heard the bell on the door. Anyone entering the store would trigger it. Slowly, Jake lifted his eyes toward the security monitor. Camera 4 showed the store clearly. The aisles, the refrigerators, the front doors, and the security room. Jake sitting inside it, alone. The woman wasn't there. Jake slowly looked back through the glass. She was still standing in the store, watching him. Jake didn't move. For a few seconds, he simply stared through the glass. The woman hadn't moved either. She stood beside the refrigerators at the back of the store, half lit by the cold white lights from the cooler doors. Her hair hung down over her shoulders, and her hands rested loosely at her sides. She was looking straight at the security room, at Jake. Jake's eyes shifted back to the monitor. Camera 4 still showed an empty store. He leaned forward slightly in his chair. The camera view showed the aisles, the refrigerators, the front doors, and the glass wall of the security room. Jake himself was visible sitting there, but the woman wasn't. Not even a shadow. Jake slowly looked back through the glass wall. She was still there, exactly where she'd been. Then his eyes dropped to the laminated card on the desk. His finger moved down the list until he found it again. Rule 4. If you see someone inside the store, check camera 4 before leaving the security room. Jake looked back up at the monitor. Camera 4 still showed nothing. His eyes moved down one line. Rule 5. If someone inside the store does not appear on camera 4, do not leave the security room. They will leave eventually. Jake leaned back slowly. "Okay," he murmured under his breath. The woman didn't move. For nearly a minute, she simply stood there, staring toward the security room. Then she began to walk, slowly, one step at a time down the aisle toward the front counter. Jake's stomach tightened. Her shoes made no sound on the floor, no footsteps, no shifting shelves. Jake looked up at the monitor again. Camera 4 still showed the store completely empty, but through the glass wall, the woman was now halfway down the aisle. Closer. She stopped beside the counter. From where she stood, she could clearly see Jake through the glass. Jake forced himself to stay seated. "Do not leave the security room," the rule repeated in his head. The woman tilted her head slightly, as if studying him. Then she slowly turned and looked around the store. Her eyes moved across the aisles, across the refrigerators, across the glass wall, but she never appeared on the monitor. Jake's eyes kept darting between the real store and the screen. Reality. Camera. Reality. Camera. Every time he checked the screen, the store was empty. Finally, the woman turned back toward the front doors. She walked slowly to the exit. The bell above the door didn't ring when she opened it. Cold night air slipped into the store for a moment. Then the door closed again. Jake stared through the glass. The store was empty. Carefully, he looked back at the monitor. Camera 4 showed exactly the same thing. Empty aisles, empty floor. The woman was gone. Jake let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "Oh, I am so quitting tomorrow," he muttered under his breath. He looked down at the laminated card again. Whoever wrote the rules had known this would happen, and that thought made Jake feel a little less comfortable, because it meant this had happened before. Jake leaned back in the chair and stared at the camera feeds. Everything looked normal again. Outside, the highway remained dark and empty. Jake checked the clock. 12:56 a.m. 4 minutes until he had to lock the doors. He picked up the laminated card again, just to read the rest of the rules one more time. And that was when he heard it. A faint sound from outside. Jake looked up at the monitor. A dark sedan rolled slowly up to pump 2 and stopped. The engine stayed running for a moment before the driver's door opened. A man stepped out. Jake immediately felt a small wave of relief. A normal customer. The man walked over to the pump, looked at the display, then glanced toward the security room window. Jake slid the small payment window open. "Pump 2?" Jake asked. "Yeah," the man said, holding out a 20. Jake took the bill and punched the amount into the register. Behind him, the monitor flickered softly. Everything normal. The man filled his tank, got back into the sedan, and drove away toward the highway. Jake watched the car disappear down the road on camera 2. Silence returned again. He checked the clock. 12:59 a.m. 1 minute, Jake muttered. Right on time, he stood up and walked into the store. The bell above the door jingled softly as he reached up and turned the lock. Then he stepped back into the security room. 1 a.m. Jake sat down again and looked at the laminated card. Rule 1 was done. For about 20 minutes, nothing happened. Jake scrolled on his phone, occasionally glancing up at the cameras. Then, Jake jumped slightly. The sound came from the small sliding window beside him. A dull tap against the glass. Jake turned his head slowly. Someone was standing outside the window. A man. He leaned down slightly so he could see Jake through the glass. "Pump 4, the man said, holding up some cash. Jake hesitated. Something about the timing made him uneasy. His eyes drifted slowly toward the laminated card on the desk, then down to the last rule. Rule 8. If someone knocks on the security room window after 1 a.m., do Do not open it, no matter who it is. Jake looked back at the man outside the glass. The man knocked again. "Hey," he said, tapping the window. "Pump 4. Jake didn't move. The man frowned slightly. Then he knocked again, harder this time. "Come on, man," he said. "You just helped that other guy." Jake felt his stomach tighten. His eyes moved back to the rule. Do not open it. Outside the window, the man leaned a little closer to the glass and smiled. The smile didn't reach his eyes. Jake noticed something else then. The man wasn't looking at him anymore. His eyes had shifted slightly, looking past Jake, toward the desk, toward the laminated card, as if he could see it, as if he knew exactly what Jake was reading. The man tapped the glass one more time. Slow, patient. Then he straightened up. The smile faded, and without another word, he turned and walked away from the window. Jake immediately looked up at the monitor. On camera 1, the man walked calmly toward the pumps, but instead of getting into a car, he simply walked past them, out of the bright fluorescent lights and into the darkness beyond the station. Jake stared at the screen. There had been no car, no headlights, nothing, just the man, standing outside the window. Jake slowly picked up the laminated card again. The rules suddenly didn't feel strange anymore. They felt necessary. After everything that had already happened, the silence felt worse than the strange parts. Jake checked the clock. 2:03 a.m. He leaned back in the chair and rubbed his eyes. 5 more hours, he muttered. Jake looked back up at the monitor. Camera 1, pumps. Camera 2, parking lot. Camera 3, alley. Camera 4, store. Everything normal. Then something flickered. Jake leaned forward. On camera 3, the alley camera, the light above the dumpster flickered again. Once. Twice. Jake squinted at the screen. The alley was empty. Then the light flickered again. For a split second, the alley went completely dark. When the light came back on, someone was standing there. Jake's stomach dropped. The figure stood beside the dumpster, tall, completely still. Jake hadn't seen anyone walk into the alley. The security monitor showed the same frozen image. The figure wasn't moving, just standing there in the narrow strip of light. Jake quickly glanced through the glass wall into the store. Still empty. Then he looked back to the screen. The figure in the alley hadn't moved. Jake slowly leaned closer to the monitor, trying to make out the person's face. The image on camera 3 flickered slightly again, and the figure was suddenly closer. Not walking, not moving, just closer than it had been a second before. Jake's heart began to pound. He hadn't looked away from the screen, but somehow the distance had changed. He glanced quickly at camera 2. The parking lot was still empty. Camera 1, pumps empty. Camera 4, store empty. Jake looked back at the alley camera. The figure was now standing directly beneath the flickering light. Its head was tilted slightly upward, looking straight at the camera, looking straight at Jake. And then, the alley light flickered again. When it came back on, the alley was empty. Jake sat frozen in the chair. He stared at the monitor for several seconds. Nothing moved. No footsteps. No sounds from outside. Just the hum of the building. Then something else changed. Jake noticed it slowly. Very slowly. Because it took a moment for his brain to register what he was seeing. On camera 2, something had appeared in the parking lot. Jake leaned forward again. His stomach twisted. Someone was standing beside a car. Jake's car. The figure stood right next to the driver's door. Jake slowly looked down at the laminated card. His finger moved to the rule near the bottom. Rule 7. Before leaving, check camera 2. If the camera shows someone standing near your car, do not leave the security room. Wait until they are gone. But now Jake noticed something worse. The figure wasn't looking at the car. It was looking directly at the security room, as if it knew exactly where he was sitting. Jake swallowed and looked down at the laminated card again. "Okay," he whispered. Minutes crawled by, then hours. Every so often, Jake checked camera 2. The figure never moved. It just stood there beside his car, waiting. By the time the sky began to lighten, Jake's eyes felt heavy from staring at the screen all night. He checked the clock. 6:54 a.m., almost the end of the shift. Jake leaned forward and checked camera 2 again. The parking lot was empty. The figure beside his car was gone. Jake blinked. He leaned closer to the monitor. Nothing. Just his car sitting alone beneath the dull gray morning light. Jake slowly looked down at the laminated card again. Wait until they are gone. He looked back up at the screen. They were gone. Jake stood up. His legs felt stiff after sitting for so long. He walked into the store and unlocked the front door. The early morning air was cold. The sky beyond the highway had turned pale. Jake grabbed his keys and stepped outside. The pumps were silent. The parking lot was empty. He walked toward his car. Halfway there, he felt it again. That strange feeling, like someone watching him. Jake kept walking. Rule 6. When you lock up for the night, do not look back. Proceed directly to your car and leave. Jake reached his car and opened the door. The morning air was cold against his face. Then he felt it. That strange feeling again, like someone was standing behind him, watching. Jake froze beside the open car door. Rule 6. When you lock up for the night, do not look back. Proceed directly to your car and leave. Jake swallowed. He knew the rule. He had followed every rule all night, every single one. But now that feeling was stronger, right behind him. A quiet sound shifted on the pavement. Jake's heart began to pound. Slowly, Jake turned around. Someone was standing behind him. It was him. The same face, the same clothes, standing only a few feet away. Jake stared in disbelief. "What?" The other Jake tilted his head slightly, then smiled. Should have listened to the rules. Before Jake could react, everything went dark. Morning arrived slowly over the highway. Carl's pickup truck rolled into the gas station just after sunrise. He parked beside the pumps and stepped out. The place looked quiet. Too quiet. Carl walked to the front door and unlocked it. The bell jingled softly as he stepped inside. The store was empty. The refrigerators hummed quietly along the back wall. Carl walked into the small security room and looked at the desk. The laminated card was still sitting there, exactly where he had left it. Carl sighed. "Damn," he muttered. "Real pity." He shook his head slightly. "I thought this one was going to make it." Carl straightened the laminated card on the desk and turned toward the door. "Real pity," he muttered again. He stepped out of the security room and walked toward the front of the store. Behind him, the security monitors hummed quietly. Carl didn't look back. On the screen, camera 3 showed the narrow alley behind the station, the dumpster, the flickering light, empty pavement. Then a figure slowly stepped into the frame. It stood beneath the light, perfectly still. It was Jake, or something that looked exactly like him. The same clothes, the same face, standing there in the alley behind the gas station, watching the camera. For several seconds, the figure didn't move. Then slowly, very slowly, Jake's double raised one hand and waved at the camera. It's the summer of 1998. McDonald's is running one of those promotions where certain Happy Meals come with free CD-ROM demo games. Most of them are forgettable. But one of the discs circulating that summer is different. The sleeve is plain white cardboard, no logos, no instructions, just 2 words printed in black ink. Find me. A 15-year-old boy named Mark gets one of these discs on a Friday afternoon. At first, he barely notices it. It looks cheap, probably some unfinished promotional game. But that weekend, his parents are out of town visiting relatives, and Mark has the house to himself, which means 2 things: pizza and computer games all night. Around 9 o'clock that evening, Mark remembers the disc. He goes to his room and switches on his computer. The monitor hums softly as the screen warms to life. Mark slides the CD into the drive. The computer whirs. The screen goes black. For a moment, nothing happens. Then green text appears. Find me. A second line slowly types underneath. Before I find you. Mark chuckles quietly. Okay, weird. The screen flickers. Instead of a menu, a photograph appears. Mark leans closer to the monitor. The image shows a suburban house. His house. The photo is taken from across the street, and standing in the driveway is Mark, backpack over his shoulder, unlocking the front door, the exact moment he arrived home from school earlier that afternoon. Mark stares at the screen. At first, he assumes he must be mistaken. Maybe the house just looks similar. But the longer he looks, the more details he recognizes. The dent in the mailbox, the cracked flower pot near the porch, even the sticker on his backpack. This isn't a similar house. It's his. A strange knot forms in Mark's stomach. The screen changes again. The photograph disappears. Now the monitor shows a black screen with pixelated text. Level 1. Underneath it are 2 labels. You, Mark. And below that, me. Then a final word appears. Cold. Mark frowns. Before he can think about it further, the screen flickers again. Another photograph appears. This one makes Mark sit up straight. It shows the hallway inside his house, taken from the far end, looking toward the living room. The lights are off. The faint glow of the television barely illuminates the space. The angle is wrong, like someone is standing in the hallway holding the camera. Mark slowly pushes his chair back. His heartbeat starts to pick up. He listens. The house is silent. Too silent. He doesn't leave his room. Instead, he stares at the bedroom door, waiting. Nothing happens. The screen flickers again. Level 2. You. Mark. Me. The word appears. Warmer. Another photograph loads. This one shows the staircase, taken halfway up, looking down toward the front door. Mark's stomach drops, because the front door in the photo is locked, exactly the way it is right now, which means whoever took that picture took it after Mark got home. Inside the house, Mark doesn't move. He listens again. Still nothing. But now the silence feels heavier, like the house itself is holding its breath. The screen flickers. Level 3. You. Mark. Me. The word appears. Warm. Another photograph appears. This one stops Mark cold. It shows his bedroom, taken from the doorway, looking directly at him, sitting at his desk. But something in the photo is wrong. Behind him, the closet door is slightly open. Mark slowly turns his head. The closet door across the room is closed. His chest tightens. He stands up quietly, walks to the bedroom door, and locks it. The small click of the lock sounds much louder than it should. Mark backs away from the door. His eyes move around the room. Bed, window, desk, then the closet. The screen flickers again. Level 4. You. Mark. Me. The word appears slowly. Very warm. Mark's hands feel cold now. He stares at the screen, waiting. The house is silent. Then he hears something. Behind him. A faint sound. Fabric shifting. Mark's breathing becomes shallow. He slowly turns back toward the computer. And that's when the game updates. The screen flashes. New text appears. Final level. Another line types underneath. Final chance. Below it, the familiar labels appear. You. Mark. Me. For several seconds, nothing happens. Then the final word appears. Hot. Mark stares at the screen. Hot means close. Very close. His eyes slowly scan the room. The bed. The window. The desk. Then his gaze stops. On the closet. The closet door is closed. But suddenly, the earlier photo flashes in his mind, the one where it was open, and the sound he just heard from that direction. Mark slowly raises his hand. He points toward the closet. "You're in the closet," he says. Nothing happens. 5 seconds pass, then 10. The silence stretches painfully. Then suddenly, the computer explodes with color. Confetti bursts across the screen. "You win!" Mark jumps in his chair. Another message appears. "You have won." There is a pause. Then the final line appears. "The right to live." Mark lets out a shaky laugh. For a moment, he thinks it's just a joke. Then he hears it. From the closet. A soft sound. Fabric brushing against wood. Something shifting its weight. The closet door creaks open behind him. Something inside the closet steps out. He's frozen with fear. He doesn't move. He only hears footsteps, slow, quiet, moving across the floor behind him, toward the bedroom door. The handle turns. The door opens, then closes again. The house falls completely silent. For a long time, Mark doesn't move. Slowly, he looks back up at the monitor. The celebration graphics are gone. The screen is black, except for 2 words. Good game. Mark reaches forward and quickly presses the eject button. The drive tray slides open. The disc sits there. For a moment, it looks exactly the same. White label, black lettering. But when Mark picks it up, something feels wrong. He turns the disc over in his hand. The words on the label have changed. The 2 words that had been printed there earlier, the ones that said "Find me," are gone. Now the label reads something else. 2 new words. "You found me." Mark stares at the disc, and slowly, very slowly, he realizes something. The game never asked him to survive. It only asked him to play. Tonight's story is about a woman named Rachel, who found a photo of herself in a moment she didn't remember. And by the time she realized why, it was already happening. Rachel noticed the photo the moment she walked into her kitchen. It was sitting on the table. She didn't know how long it had been there. She just knew. She hadn't put it there. It was a Polaroid. That was the first thing that didn't make sense. Rachel didn't own a Polaroid camera. She never had. She picked it up slowly, turning it over in her hands. There was nothing written on the back. No date, no message, just the image. It was her, standing in the kitchen, holding a mug, and on the table, a blue and white check tea towel. Rachel stared at it for a long time, not because it was frightening, but because it felt wrong. The image itself was completely ordinary, just a random moment, the kind of thing you wouldn't even notice if it hadn't been frozen in time. But she knew she hadn't taken it, and she lived alone. She glanced around the kitchen, half expecting to see someone standing there, watching her. But the room was empty. The house was quiet. She checked the doors, locked, windows, closed. Everything exactly how it should be, which only made it worse, because it meant one of two things. Either someone had been inside, or the photo had come from somewhere else. Rachel left it on the table, but she couldn't stop thinking about it. All day, it lingered in the back of her mind. No matter what she was doing, she kept coming back to the same questions. How was it taken? When? Why? And eventually, what if it meant something? She told herself that was ridiculous. It was just a photo. But the more she thought about it, the less it felt like just a photo. It felt deliberate, specific. The mug, the towel, the exact position, everything placed just right. By the afternoon, she had looked at it more times than she could count, each time hoping to notice something new, something she had missed. But there was nothing, just her, in her kitchen, doing something completely ordinary. That night, Rachel left the photo where it was. She didn't want it in her room, didn't want it near her. She told herself she was overthinking it, but she still left it there. Sleep didn't come easily, not because she was scared, not exactly. It was something else. Her mind wouldn't settle. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw it. That same image, the angle, the position, the way she was holding the mug. It stayed with her, burned into her memory. When morning came, everything felt normal again. Too normal. Rachel walked into the kitchen. The photo was still on the table, exactly where she had left it. She looked at it briefly, then turned away, tried to just start her day. She made coffee, moved through the kitchen without thinking. Routine, automatic. She didn't notice the spill at first, just a small drop of coffee on the counter. She caught it out of the corner of her eye and sighed, grabbed the tea towel, wiped it down. The cloth was still damp in her hand. She tossed it onto the table. Then she picked up her mug, brought it up, and froze. She knew, before she even looked, because she had seen it so many times. The towel, the position, the mug in her hand. It was the same, exactly the same. Not similar, the same. Rachel's stomach dropped. Slowly, she turned her head and looked at the photo. For a moment, she hoped. Maybe she had imagined it. Maybe it would be different. But it wasn't. It was still her, standing there, holding the mug, the towel on the table, exactly as she was now. Except, something had changed. Rachel's chest tightened. She was sure it hadn't been there before. But now, standing behind her, in the hallway, there was something in the photo. Tall, still, a shape, dark against the doorway. No face, no detail, just there. Rachel turned slowly toward the hallway. Her heart felt heavy in her chest. Not racing, not panicked, just certain. The hallway was empty. Of course it was. She didn't feel relief. If anything, that made it worse. Because something about the photo felt final. Like it wasn't showing a possibility. It was showing something that was already decided. Rachel stood there, barely moving, listening, waiting. Her grip tightened slightly around the mug. She didn't know what she was waiting for, but deep down, she knew something was about to happen. Then the light in the hallway shifted, just slightly. She saw it from the corner of her eye. Something moved, not quickly, not suddenly, just enough to be there. Rachel turned, and this time, the hallway wasn't empty. It was standing there, exactly like the photo. Tall, still, silent. Rachel didn't move, not because she couldn't, but because there was nowhere to go. And in that moment, she understood. The photo hadn't been left there by accident. It hadn't been a mistake. It hadn't even been a warning. It had been a moment, a fixed point, something that was always going to happen. She just hadn't reached it yet. Rachel stood there, holding the mug, exactly like the photo. And the last thing she realized was that it hadn't been watching her. It had been waiting for her to step into the picture. Megan installed the camera on a Saturday morning. It took less than 10 minutes. By that afternoon, she'd already checked it 3 times. Not because she needed to, just because she could. A delivery driver, a neighbor walking past. Nothing unusual. That night, her phone chimed softly. Motion detected. She picked it up, opened the app. The porch on the screen wasn't hers. Different door, different welcome mat, different house entirely. Megan paused, scrolled up, checked the device name. It was still labeled as her front door. She looked back at the video. A small cardboard package sat on the porch. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, someone stepped into frame. A man in a hoodie, head down. He looked around once, then grabbed the package and walked off. The clip ended. Megan stared at the screen a second longer than she needed to, then closed the app. Should she report it? To who? She didn't even know where it was. The next day, she met her friends for coffee. Same place they always went. Same corner table. She wasn't really listening at first, scrolling through her phone, half there. "It's been happening all week," one of them said. Megan glanced up. "What has?" she asked. "Packages," her friend said. "People are getting stuff stolen off their porches. Like, right after they're delivered." Another nodded. "2 houses on my street." Megan didn't say anything. That night, the notification came again. Motion detected. She hesitated this time, just for a second, then opened it. Another house. This one closer, she could tell. A narrow walkway, a familiar streetlight. The camera angle shifted slightly, like it had adjusted itself. Voices came through, muffled at first, then clearer. A man and a woman, arguing. Megan leaned forward slightly. The man stepped into view, angry, close to the door. The woman followed and shoved him. He shoved back harder. Something fell. A crash. The camera caught it all. The clip cut off. Megan didn't sleep well that night. The argument stayed with her, the way it escalated. She told herself someone would have stepped in. A neighbor, someone nearby. She didn't know where the house was, didn't know who they were, only that she hadn't done anything. The next alert came, just after sunset. She didn't ignore it. Couldn't. Opened it immediately. This time, it was unmistakable. The house on the screen was only a few doors down. She'd walked past it, every day. The porch light was off. The front door closed. For a moment, nothing happened. Then figures moved into frame. 3 men. Fast. Purposeful. One of them tried the handle. Locked. Another stepped forward and forced it. The door gave. They disappeared inside. The camera stayed fixed, watching. Megan's hand tightened around her phone. She looked up, toward her own window. The street outside was quiet. No movement, no noise. She looked back at the screen. The door in the footage was still open. Dark inside. The clip ended. Megan stood there for a long time, thinking. If it wasn't random, then what was it? And why her? She didn't have to wait long. The final notification came just after midnight. A softer chime this time, but louder somehow. Motion detected. Megan didn't move at first, just stared at the screen. Her reflection looked back at her, pale, still. Then she tapped it. The porch appeared. Her porch. The doormat. The railing. The crack in the top step she'd been meaning to fix. Everything exactly where it should be. Except for the man standing there. He didn't move, didn't knock, just stood, facing the door. Something hung at his side. Megan leaned closer, her breath caught. A gun, resting loosely in his hand. The camera angle didn't change, didn't shift, just held on him. Watching, waiting. Megan's heart started to race. She looked toward her front door, the real one, just down the hallway. Silent. She looked back at the screen. The man hadn't moved, not even slightly. Then, the video froze, for a fraction of a second, and in that still frame, his head was turned, looking directly into the camera. The doorbell rang. Tara almost didn't pick it up. The phone was lying just off the trail, face up in the dirt, screen still glowing. At first, she thought someone had just dropped it. Happens all the time. People stop for photos, set things down, forget. But this felt different. The screen wasn't just on, it was recording. The camera app was open, red dot blinking. The timer read 47 minutes. Tara frowned. That meant whoever owned it had been recording for nearly an hour, and they weren't here to stop it. She glanced around. The trail was empty. No voices, no footsteps. Just wind moving through the trees. Probably dropped it, she said quietly. But she didn't sound convinced. She picked it up. The screen shifted in her hand, still recording, still going. Then she tapped the screen, scrolled back, pressed play. Okay, day 3. Still following the route. The camera moved steadily along the trail. Trees, dirt, sunlight breaking through branches. They said I'd reach the lookout today, if I stayed on the trail. Tara's brow furrowed slightly. The man gave a quiet laugh. Trail doesn't match the map anymore, but they told me not to rely on the map. The footage continued. The man wasn't talking as much now. His breathing was louder. Every few seconds, the camera flicked back over his shoulder. Nothing there. Again, nothing. Then, he stopped walking. Did you hear that? Silence. Wind. Leaves shifting. Then, something else. Faint. Not quite footsteps. The camera turned quickly, too quickly. The image blurred, trees streaking across the frame. Then it steadied. Nothing. But just before the camera lowered, Tara paused the video, scrolled back, frame by frame. There, for a split second, something between the trees, too tall, too still. She swallowed, pressed play. The man was walking faster now. "You're fine," he muttered. "Just keep following it. Just follow the instructions." He stopped again. "Okay. I'm not crazy." The footage shifted. He was watching his own recording back, scrubbing through, fast-forwarding. Then suddenly, he stopped, rewound, paused, zoomed in. "What is that?" The image sharpened, and this time it was clear. Behind him, standing on the trail, watching. "What is that?" Tara felt something cold settle in her chest, because she recognized the trail, the bend in the path, the broken branch hanging low, the fallen log off to the side. She had passed it, not long ago. She looked up. The forest felt different now, too still, too quiet. Then, she heard it. Behind her, a sound. Soft, slow, not quite footsteps. Tara looked back down at the phone. Her hands weren't steady anymore. She scrubbed forward, to the end. The man was running, breathing ragged, branches snapping past the camera. Just follow it. That's what they said. That's how you get out." He tripped. The phone slammed into the ground. The camera tilted, now facing back down the trail, empty for a moment. Then, something stepped into frame. Too tall. The shape, wrong, like it didn't belong there. It moved, but not like anything should. The man's voice, barely a whisper. "You're still behind me, aren't you?" The video cut. Tara stared at the screen, breathing shallow. Then, she noticed something. The red dot, still blinking. The recording hadn't stopped. Slowly, the camera view shifted, adjusted. It was no longer showing the trail. It was showing her. Tara froze. The phone trembled in her hand. Then, a notification appeared on the screen. "Continue following the trail." Another line appeared beneath it. "Day 1 begins when the phone is found." Tara's breath caught. She looked up, very slowly, and behind her, something moved. Late-night rides were usually the easiest. No traffic, no small talk. Just quiet streets and easy money. That's why Brendan accepted the job without thinking. Pickup location, a residential street. Nothing unusual. He pulled up outside the address, engine idling, headlights stretching across an empty driveway. He checked the app. Correct location. He waited. 10 seconds. 20. A full minute. No one came out. Brendan leaned forward slightly, trying to see through the dark. The house had no lights on, no movement. Nothing. He exhaled quietly and reached for his phone to cancel the ride. Then, the back door opened. Slow, deliberate. The sound settled into the silence. A second later, the door closed. Brendan froze. His eyes moved to the rearview mirror. The back seat was empty. He turned slightly, looking directly behind him. Nothing there. No movement. No one. Hello? Silence. Brendan swallowed. He looked back at his phone. The ride had started. Destination locked in. The timer counting. He hesitated. Probably nothing. A glitch. The app had already begun the trip. So, He drove. The streets were empty. Streetlights passed in a steady rhythm. Light, then shadow, then light again. Brendan kept his eyes forward. Every so often, they shifted to the mirror. Each time, the same result: an empty back seat. But the feeling didn't match what he saw. It felt like someone was there, still, silent, watching him. His grip tightened on the steering wheel. He thought about turning on the radio, then decided against it. The silence felt safer. The GPS voice broke through. "You have arrived." Brendan pulled over. Another quiet street. No lights, no movement. He stared ahead, waiting. The back door opened. Cool air slipped into the car. A brief pause. The door closed again. Brendan stayed still. When he finally turned, he already knew what he'd see. Nothing. His phone buzzed softly. He looked down. The trip had ended. A rating had come through. 5 stars. Brendan stared at the screen. A message appeared underneath. "Thank you for the quiet ride." His throat tightened. Slowly, very slowly, he reached one hand back and pressed it against the seat. He stopped breathing. The fabric was warm, like someone had just been sitting there. I only started delivering food because I needed extra cash. My 2-year anniversary with my girlfriend was coming up, and I wanted to get her something nice. She'd been incredibly supportive the past couple of years, and I figured she deserved something special. So I signed up for a delivery app. It seemed simple enough. Drive around, drop off some food, make a little extra money. Piece of cake. The first few nights were exactly what I expected. Normal orders, normal customers, nothing weird. Then one night, around 8:30, my phone buzzed with a new delivery request. I tapped the notification and opened the order details. The address looked unfamiliar, but then something else caught my attention. Under the order description, where the food should have been listed, there was just one word: Adam. I frowned at the screen. No burger, no noodles, no pizza, just my name. I stared at the screen and laughed. "Nice," I said. "Guess I'm the order tonight." As soon as I said it, the screen refreshed. I hadn't touched anything. The page updated on its own. Then the accept button started blinking, slowly, over and over. I frowned and tapped the decline button. Nothing happened. I tried again. Still nothing. "Seriously?" I muttered. I started tapping the power button on my phone, trying to restart it. The button didn't respond. Now I was getting annoyed. So in frustration, I started jabbing at the screen. And somehow, I ended up accepting the order. Perfect. Now I was stuck delivering something that apparently didn't even exist. I sighed and drove to the restaurant. When I walked inside, the place felt strangely quiet. At first, I didn't notice. I was still irritated about the app glitch. But after a few seconds, something felt off. There were no customers, not a single one. All the tables were empty. The lights were on, but the entire restaurant was silent. I walked up to the counter. "Hello?" No answer. I glanced toward the kitchen. Still nothing. Then the door at the back slowly creaked open. A man stepped out. He was pale. Not just pale like someone who stayed indoors too much. His skin had this grayish color under the lights. He didn't say a word. He just walked to the counter and placed something in front of me. A small wooden box. Plain. No bag. No receipt. No restaurant logo. Just a simple wooden box that fit easily in the palms of my hands. I looked at it for a second. Then I looked back up at him. He was watching me, waiting. Something about the way he stared made me decide not to ask questions. So I picked up the box. It was slightly warm, like it had been sitting near a fire. I shrugged and headed back to my car. As soon as I got in, I remembered the problem. The address. The place still didn't exist on GPS. I opened the delivery app again, and somehow, the route had already updated. A navigation line appeared on the screen. It pointed toward a road I recognized. I had driven through that area before, but I had never seen that street name in my life. Still, the route looked real enough, so I started driving. The drive itself was uneventful, except for one thing. My phone was still acting strange. The delivery app wouldn't minimize. Every time I tried to leave it, the screen snapped right back. I couldn't check messages. I couldn't play music. I couldn't even make a call. The app had completely taken over my phone. 20 minutes later, the navigation told me I had arrived. I slowed the car, and there it was. The street. The house. A normal-looking house at the end of a quiet road. I sat there for a moment. I was pretty sure this street hadn't existed before, but the house looked real enough. No lights were on inside, and of course, the porch light was off. Great, I muttered. I stepped out of the car. As I walked up to the porch, my phone buzzed. A message from the customer. I opened it. 3 words. Please come in. I stared at the screen. Yeah, right. I'm not walking into some stranger's house for a delivery. I walked up to the door and placed the box on the porch. Then I opened the app to take the delivery photo, but the camera button wouldn't respond. I tapped it again. Still nothing. I groaned. Fine, I muttered. Maybe the customer was having app issues too. So I picked up the box and pushed the door open. The smell hit me immediately. Soot, burnt matches, and something else underneath it. Rotten eggs. The kind of smell that makes the back of your throat sting. I covered my nose and stepped inside. Hello? I called. The house was completely silent. I took a few steps into the hallway. The floor creaked under my shoes. Box in one hand, phone in the other. I tried to ignore the smell. As I stepped further down the hallway, the smell of burnt matches got stronger, like someone had just struck one. I frowned and glanced around. Hello? Still nothing. I pulled out my phone and opened the chat. Maybe the customer would answer there. My breathing felt a little heavier now. Probably the smell. I started typing. Hi, I'm inside with your delivery. Then the typing bubbles appeared. The customer was responding. I waited. My hands were starting to tremble. My chest felt tight. Then the message arrived. It wasn't text. It was an image. I opened it. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. Then I realized. It was the hallway. The hallway I was standing in. And in the middle of the photo was me, holding the box. My phone slipped from my hand, and everything went black. Hours later, Adam's girlfriend stared at the clock. It was after midnight. Adam always texted her when he finished delivering. Always. But tonight, she hadn't heard from him once. Her messages weren't even sending. Eventually, she called the delivery company. Hi, she said nervously. My boyfriend Adam is delivering tonight and I can't reach him. There was a pause. Then the employee replied, Ma'am, Adam isn't scheduled to drive tonight. Her stomach tightened. No, he told me he clocked in earlier. Another pause. Then the employee said quietly, Our records show Adam hasn't opened the driver app today. The police didn't take the report seriously. Adam was 20 years old, an adult. People disappeared for a night all the time. And according to his phone's GPS data, Adam had never even left the house. The location showed his phone sitting on the kitchen table all evening, exactly where she remembered him leaving it. But something wasn't right. Adam would never just disappear. The next morning, she started calling around. Friends, co-workers, anyone who might have seen him. Most people hadn't. But one of his friends said something strange. "Yeah, I think I saw his car last night," he said. "It was around 9 or so. He turned down that side road near the old steel factory." She frowned. "That road doesn't go anywhere." "I know," he said. "That's why I noticed it." So she drove there. The rusted skeleton of the old steel factory still loomed over the road, just like it had for years. The same broken windows, the same empty parking lot. But something was different. A narrow side street she had never seen before branched off beside the factory. She was certain it hadn't been there yesterday, but now it was. She slowed the car. For a moment, she had the strange feeling she shouldn't turn there, but she did. The street was quiet, too quiet. At the very end stood a single house, old, dark. The front door was slightly open. She stepped out of the car. The air smelled faintly of soot and burnt matches. Underneath it, rotten eggs. Her stomach twisted. "Adam?" she called. No answer. She walked slowly up to the porch. Something sat beside the door. A small wooden box. Plain, unremarkable, about the size of someone's hands. She crouched beside it. There was a small dark stain on the front, just a single drop of blood. Her hands trembled as she lifted the lid. Inside the box were several small pieces of cloth, each tied neatly with black thread. She slowly untied one, and when she saw what was inside, she screamed. If you enjoyed tonight's stories, subscribe for more original horror. And until next time, if your phone rings late at night, if your camera turns on by itself, or if something online starts watching you back, don't let it know you noticed, because not everything watching you is on the other side of the screen.